Hey everybody, my name is Jeremy Brown and it's my privilege to be a part of the team here at Journey, and I am thrilled that you have chosen just to join us just for a few minutes. Listen, I've been driving now for about 30 years. I know that doesn't sound like a lot of time to some of us, but I've been driving for those 30 years extremely quickly. I think I've gotten more driving in than most people who've been driving in for 50 years because I chronically speed. I got my first speeding ticket on the very first day I got my driver's license. So for all those 30 years, I have tried desperately to stop speeding. I've tried everything. I've tried getting mad at myself. I've tried legalistically obeying the speed limits. I even have Post-it notes that say, "Are you going too fast?" on my dashboard. I've tried everything and never been able to really get a handle on it. Have you ever had something that you've really wanted to do that you knew was the right thing to do, but you just couldn't quite figure out how to get it done because it seemed like all of the circumstances of life seemed to crowd in around it, and the desire that you had to do the right thing got overcrowded by all the other noise in your life? Well, if you have, today is going to be a great day for you. We're in a series called Overcomer, and our teaching pastor, Chris Pace, is going to walk us into part 2, where we're work together on overcoming sin in our life, winning the all-out battle against sin. Let's check in with Chris in the big room.
You think you own me, but you don't. You think you can destroy me. You can't. Your labels do not contain me. Your lies do not intimidate me. I will not be less than what I was created to be, and I will not run in fear. Time and time again, you've held me down, but not today. Today, I win the battle. Today, you run from me, because I am strong. I am courageous. I am an overcomer.
Toddlers can drive their parents crazy by asking why. Why does that happen? Why is the grass green? Why is the sky blue? Why does it rain? Why are people? Why? As you get older, there's another question, and it drives you crazy or you love it, depending on your personality. That question starts with 2 words: what if? You can end any logical conversation by just throwing out a what if. We live in the what if world. Somebody can be saying something, you just go, yeah, but what if? And you can be totally outlandish. It doesn't matter. It stops logical thought. So I've got some what ifs for you this morning. They're not great thoughts, but they're starting points. How about this one? What if oxygen makes our voices deeper, but helium actually brings it back to normal? See, that would change everything. We've been upside down. Okay, let me give you another one. What if cats actually have their own internet and it's filled with pictures of us? I know, that would change the entire scope of the universe. All right, let me give you another one. What if birds aren't actually singing? What if they're screaming because they're all afraid of heights? Right? What if? What ifs change everything. Here's one. What if we used to be able to wish, but then someone wished we couldn't wish anymore? Think about it. All right, one more, and this one is probably the end for me because I don't even know what to do with this. What if one day Google was deleted and we couldn't Google to see what happened to Google? What if? What if changes everything? A long time ago, I started going to church, and when I started going to church church often lands in this place. If it's a place that teaches the Bible, there was a group of people that asked Jesus one day, summarize, get to the bottom line. We don't have time for the whole book. We don't have time for the whole sermon. Cut to the chase, get to the bottom line, just the facts, just nothing but the facts. What's the most important part? And he said in Matthew 22, 37, 38, he said, you must, keyword must, you must love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul and all of your mind. And then just a few seconds later, he added this piece onto it, and you must love your neighbor as yourself. You must love God, heart, soul, mind, your whole being. You must love God. And then to add to it, I know you care for yourself. It's built in you to care for yourself. If somebody throws a ball at your head, you duck. Nobody trains you to do that. You just figure it out. It's self-preservation. And I want you to love others the way you love you. You must. Well, I was having a conversation a lot of years ago, and a lady asked me a question, and I'm pretty young, not very long out of Bible college, and young as a pastor, which being interpreted means I was pretty close to omniscient at that point. There wasn't anything I didn't know. Standing in her house, in her kitchen, having a discussion about God and Scripture and all of those things, and she asked me a what-if question, and it's decades later, I still remember the day, I still remember where I was, I still remember her asking it, and this was her question. In regard to you must love the Lord your God and you must love people like you love yourself, she said, but what if? What if I don't? And I said, well, you just need to. Because there's a great answer. Her question wasn't, I don't want to love God, but what if I don't love God? How do you love God more? Like, do you will yourself into it? Do you just, how do you love anybody more? Do you just grit your way in, will yourself in? If you don't love God, and her issue was, I try to love God, but I'll be honest, I'm not even sure how to love someone in real life. But even more, I'm horrible at figuring out how do I love someone I can't see or feel or smell or verbally hear? How do I love someone far away? How do I love? What if I don't love? I'm trying, but I'm not sure I feel love. I'm not sure if I do love. What if? So what do? If you must love the Lord your God, and you must love people, but what if you don't? How do you start? That's a good what if question. Well, we're in session 2 of a series called Overcomers. Overcomer is not what you may think. It's not saying, hey, you just got to persevere. Life is crazy. Life is difficult right now, and you just got to hang in there, be an overcomer. It's not saying, man, if you're in the middle of a tough relationship, you just got to hang in there and get through it. It's not that kind of overcoming. It is literally saying there are some things we have to overcome in this life that if we don't overcome, it's going to derail. It's going to lessen our experience on earth. It is going to change our outcomes. We have to overcome. It's not even optional. A little bit like Jesus saying, you must love the Lord your God with all of your being and your neighbor as yourself. If we don't overcome, we will never find out or experience the life we were intended to have. That's what we want to dig into today. Second piece of that. And as we do, we start with what if, but what if I don't? Way back at the beginning of the Bible, if you wanted to start at ground zero, it says in the beginning God created, and you don't have to go to church to get this. If you just live in America for sure, there was nothing and God made something, and then it goes through a little list in Genesis chapter 1. It goes through a little list that he put a light up there for the daytime and a light for the nighttime, and he separated and made waters and separated them from the land, and he goes through this process. He made each of those things, and then he stopped at the end of that, and he saw that it was good, and he said, that's what I'm talking about. And then he took on the next day. He made the south, and then he looked at the north and said, well, at least they've got the south. And then he saw that and said, that is good. And then eventually he brought animals, and then he put Adam and Eve, and then he looked at all of it and said, it is good, and he rested. There was something that happened in that setting with Adam and Eve as he made the ones in his image, those two in his image. As he did that, there was this peace with them. There was something within them that desired to be with God, that desired to love the Lord their God with all their heart, soul, mind. They desired to love each other, and it was natural. It wasn't difficult. They did it. It was awesome. There was a desire built in them that was natural. And then something else was introduced into the story, and that was sin. There was temptation, and with temptation, there was sin. And when sin came, everything else stopped. The first thing they did was hide. The first thing they felt was uncovered or exposed. And ever since then, we've been spiraling from those actions. As a matter of fact, if you read way forward into the Bible, over into the New Testament side in Romans 5, it says these words, wherefore, because of the fact, as by one man sin entered into the world, that is our friend Adam, because sin entered and death by sin. And when it talks about death, he didn't instantly die, but he instantly began to die. Death really meaning a separation from God, and that's literally what they did. As soon as sin happened, they hid from God. They felt exposed. They didn't want God to know them, and they didn't seek to know him anymore. What sin did is it separated this natural desire that they had built within them. And so death passed upon all men for all of sin. We inherited that same issue. So there's a couple things we need to understand in the what if world. What if God built in us, in our system, in our lives, in our bodies, in our being, what if God built a system where loving God and loving people was just constructed into us? It came naturally. You didn't have to try to be more loving to people. You didn't have to try to care more and offer yourself to God. It was built into your operating system from day one. But then what if something was introduced into the system that overshadowed or diluted or eclipsed that desire that was in us? What if God built a desire in you and then something else overshadowed it? That's where we want to land today. So let's just start with this first statement. In your operating system, in your you, in the whatever comprises your soul, your body, your mind, all of you, your being, in your operating system, God installed a desire to love him and to love his best creations. It's made into you. The good news is God didn't command us, Jesus didn't command us to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, body, spirit, being, and love our neighbor. He didn't command us to do that and then go, good luck. We'll see how that plays out. Watch him screw this one up. He didn't do that at all. Before he ever commanded you to do that, he built something in you that would naturally do it. Now here's the problem. Maybe you're like the lady that talked to me and says, but what if I don't? I don't really feel that toward God. And I barely endure people, much less love my neighbor as myself. I just wish I could kill them sometimes. People are just nuts. They're all crazy. They're all idiots. I've turned on social media. I've turned on my television. I've gone to Walmart. I've done all the logical things. And my summation is they're all crazy. How do I love them? I don't even like them. Maybe you're feeling that. I just want to tell you before you go any further, God didn't ask you to do something you couldn't do. God built within you the capacity and even, here's the word, the desire to love God and to love his favorite, his best creations. It is built in you, but maybe something else is going on. If we can understand that, it helps us so much move forward and become the person we were meant to be. One of my favorite passages in the whole Bible is in John chapter 8, and one of the reasons I love it is incredibly descriptive. It paints pictures with bold and bright colors. It gives so much for your imagination to run with, but it answers so many questions. I won't take time to get to every detail just for the sake of brevity, but you can certainly go read it in John chapter 8. It's really just a 30-second, 40-second read. We'll start with this part of it in the first verse. It says, Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning, he went back again to the temple, and that's just something he did. That's where he hung out. For people who wanted truth and wanted to know, that's where they would go, and he would sit and teach. That was where he could be found. He was very predictable, and because it was very predictable, something happened. It says a crowd soon gathered, and that happened whenever he taught because he was saying things people had never heard in a way they had never heard it, and it was compelling. Here's the crazy thing about Jesus. The people who were the least like Jesus really liked Jesus. They didn't always like the religious people, but the people least like Jesus liked him. There was something about him that was real and that was fresh and that was honest and approachable. And so as he sat down, people gathered, and he sat down and he taught them. And as he was speaking in the middle of his little talk, something happened, and it wasn't just something, it was something. This is one that the people who sat in this day, at this time, at this place, told their kids and their grandkids about. We're still talking about it because it was freaky weird. And it was so substantive. What happened was something like this. As he was sitting there teaching, the teachers of the religious law, the super pious religious people of the day, the ones who were all dressed like religious people, carrying their religious paraphernalia, they were bringing something else with them. They didn't just bring their big family Bible with them this day. They brought something else, and what they found is they brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. Awkward. They didn't just go find someone who had been adulterous, because that would have been way too non-dramatic. Now, for all of us who believe that the whole political and the whole overblown everything in the world today, it's never been worse, that people would do anything to make somebody else look bad. 2,000 plus years ago, this is what happened. They went and found this woman, and who knows, maybe it was a setup from day one. Maybe it was planned this way. It seems like an odd thing that just coincidentally happened. But they found a woman not who had been adulterous, but who was in the act. And you can kind of figure that out on your own. But stop thinking about it, because that's not good. Stop that right now. They caught her and drug her fresh from the act in front of all these people, threw her down in front of Jesus, and that's what he inherited. There's a setting that you want to remember. They brought her, and they said, she's been caught, and the law says she should be stoned, and I don't mean the kind that you're thinking, but the other one where you throw rocks at people till they're dead. What are you going to do with that? All right, teacher. All right, rabbi. All right, leader. All right, spiritual guru. What you going to do with that one? And then they waited. What an awkward situation. There's so many things we could talk about that we don't have time for. We can talk about where the guy was, because the best I've figured, that's a 2-part series, and they just brought 1 part. But he wasn't needed, to be honest, to make the moment the moment. How did they know? Or what are they, peeping in windows? I mean, there's so many questions. But what we end up with is, what are you going to do? And as Jesus is confronted with that, I'm trying to think of, we do church services, we do times when people stand and teach and there's a crowd around. Even if it's like right now, wherever you're sitting, can you imagine in the middle of this, while you're listening to this, that right in the middle of that, something's just thrown like this, and you go, what am I going to do now? What is the right move in that regard? I suggest a blanket, by the way, would be a first step, but that's just me. As that lands, Jesus is now given a few choices, and his first choice is that as she is there and they're all watching, and these guys have set him up, and he actually starts by scribbling something in the sand. I don't know what it was. And then, given the moment, given the weight of the moment, given the consequences around him, Jesus does that. And then he stands up and looks at the accusers. And he kind of lands back at this point where he says, hey, listen, anybody who is here without sin, and he takes one of these and he said, why don't you cast the first stone? If you're so morally pure, hey, you know who could have done that? Him. He was there. He had the stone. He had the right. He was without sin. But he didn't say it to him, he said it to them. All of the accusers, all of the little peepees, peeping toms, all of the little religious people. Why don't you throw the first one? And then there was a pause, and I'm sure there were a lot of thoughts. And then he went back down and scribbled in the sand some more. What is he writing? I don't know. There's a lot of speculation. Some people said he was writing the names of their girlfriends. I don't know if that's true or not. I think he may have been writing the password to their laptop so everybody could check their search history. Maybe that's what he wrote down. Maybe not. I may have stretched that one a little bit. Whatever was going on, whatever he wrote, whatever he was doing, there was something about these guys that said we're in way over our head. And so these guys came armed. They didn't carry AKs or any other kind of weapon. They didn't even have slingshots. What they came with was a rock because they had brought her there because one of two things was going to happen. Either Jesus was going to have to say it's okay to do wrong, or that day they were going to end her life. Either way, Jesus was going to come off bad, and they were going to come off superior. And when Jesus said, cast the first stone if you don't have sin, if you want to start this, if that's the route we're going down, then why don't you start it? And it says, one by one, they dropped their rocks and went their way home. And then, I've heard this story told many times, and often people say, and then it left the setting completely changed. Now it was just Jesus and this woman who is there humiliated and in shame, but that's not true. That's not all that was there. There's still a whole crowd that had come to listen to him to start with. And so he's in like this little amphitheater where it's him and her, and it's awkward and it's gross and it's humiliating. And he's in a weird spot, and she's in a weird spot, and all these people are just watching. It's Jerry Springer without Jerry Springer. And everybody was waiting to see what happened next. They've already got to be cheering because the religious people went away humbled, and how often does that happen? And now Jesus, he stood up again. And he looked at the woman and he said these words to her, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? Well, he knew the answer. He just wanted to make sure she understood the answer. Her response, her only response to the entire passage, the only word that she said was, no, Lord. Does anyone of your accusers still stand before you? Not one. No, Lord, she said. Right now, I would have had a great speech prepared. It would have had probably some fun things at the beginning that made no sense to anyone, and then we would have talked about a passage from way back in the Old Testament, and then I would have had a moment, and I would have said it to her, and then I would have kind of looked over at the crowd, and they would have said, that's good. That's not where he landed. Actually, he's standing up looking at her. Does anyone condemn you? No, Lord. And his words were, neither do I. Those words may not mean much to you, but if you were sitting where she was sitting, I have a feeling it meant everything. Neither do I. Neither do I, the one who has every right to condemn you. It's not a surprise that they don't condemn you. They would if they could, but they can't because they're guilty. But I'm not guilty, and I could, and I made you, and I made you for better than this. And I hate the way that you're spending your life because you're giving away what you were meant to be. But neither do I. With what powerful 3 words, neither do I. And he finishes with this statement, go and sin no more. To which you go, well, yeah, that's easy. At least it wasn't something hard. He didn't say like, go. Sometimes Jesus, after he did things, he'd say, go tell somebody. That would have worked. Hey, neither do I. Now go tell everybody what I've done for you. Sometimes he said, don't go tell anybody. I could have done that. How about this one? The woman laying there, unclothed, caught in the middle, condemnable, yet not condemned. And his statement to her is, well, go and sin no more. And if you read it really fast, it just sounds so flippant. Sure, yeah, I'll just go and never sin again, because that's going to happen. But I don't think his statement was really as much about keeping a list of things and never messing up on my list. I think there was something deeper going on, and it brings us back to where we started this whole conversation, is that in your hard drive, in your system, God built in you a desire to know him and to love him and to love his favorite and best creation. He built it in you. But there is this something that comes between you and that desire that makes that desire so much harder. His statement, go and sin no more, isn't like, well, you better not sin because next time I will condemn you. I'll be honest with you, I've grown up in a world where not sinning was the goal. I went to church. I'm not saying somebody taught me this. I'm just saying I assumed it because maybe I'm just too simple to understand deep things. But it felt to me like the goal was not to sin. Don't sin, because if you sin, you've done wrong, and if you do wrong, you're in trouble. And Jesus had to die for you, and there was a lot of guilt and a lot of other things that I assumed. And in the end, I felt like not sinning, and then I thought God must sure hate a lot of things. One of those, adultery. He is not into that. He says a lot about that. He is anti-adultery. He's anti a lot of things, but really anti that. And then there's other lists. I mean, there's a whole big list in the Bible. Don't. It's almost like God chose the things he didn't like and made those the wrong things. Last week, if you have watched with us, Jeremy kind of unfolded God's perception of you and how we are loved in his sight and accepted. He even talked about this issue of how God chose sin. The truth is, the reason God hates sin is not because sin is necessarily just bad, or he doesn't like that. It's like I don't like fill in the blank vegetables. Let me give you one in particular, cauliflower. I don't like cauliflower. Therefore, cauliflower is evil. That God didn't choose it that way at all. As a matter of fact, he did just the opposite. He said this, I hate the things that overshadow or eclipse or dilute or distort or disrupt our desire to love God. And that's what sin does when I allow sin into my life. It literally squelches that desire that God built in me. The reason why sometimes it's so hard to love God and it's almost impossible to love people is what sin does is it takes that desire and covers it up. It pushes it down. It deems it not useful. And sometimes what we try to do is I'm going to be more loving in my relationships. I'm going to be more loving. I'm going to love more. I'm just going to try to love more. And the problem is our ability, our desire to love has been so overcome, so calloused by sin. And sometimes the reason God said don't so many times wasn't because he just hates it when we do things like that. What he hates is for us to be hurt. And what he figured out is you'll be hurt and you'll lose the life you're intended to have. There's a desire I put within you from the beginning of mankind. And when sin came in, it pushed that desire down. And if you don't deal with your sin, it will deal with you. And the way it'll deal with you is I'm not just saying if you do something bad, you're going to grow big warts or you're going to die immediately. But on the inside, you'll die a little. And what will die is that desire to love God and that desire to care for the people he created the way he does. And when that dies, you become a far less version of you. And we can blame the world we're in. We can blame everything else, but in the end, what sin does is it destroys, it separates us from God, not just from God, but it separates us from the desire to know God and be known by God because we're awkward now. Go and sin no more wasn't a command that you better not do wrong again. It was a command that please don't let the things that would hurt you come back into your life. I don't condemn you. I could, but I don't. I accept you. Please don't go back to the same things that destroyed your life and brought you here. You're better than that. You don't have to live that way. For me, in my universe, there's a few things that I have that mean a lot to me. One of them is I use a phone. Like most of us, I kind of live around that all the time. I bought a thing for my car because my car is a minute or two old, and it's a thing that you can put on your dash, and then you can put your phone on, and it makes it so you can see it. And my hands-free already work, but I needed a place because they yell at you if you drive around with your phone up to your ear. I can see it if I do some kind of GPS thing. I can see it whatever I'm doing. And I bought it, and then I stuck it, and it worked. And then one day I got a new phone cover because, you have to every now and then. And I put my new phone cover on, and then I stuck it on the thing, and it fell off. And the problem is that inside the phone cover, on the back of my phone, there's these little magnets. I know you know this stuff because you live in today. There's these little magnets. And on my old phone cover, it was thin enough and it had just enough tackiness to it that it would stick. But my new phone cover is kind of covered up my magnets, and my magnets aren't strong enough. And now when I put it there, every time I drive for more than about 30 seconds or hit a bump, it just falls off. And the only thing worse than talking on your phone is looking for your phone that slid under your seat. That's a mess. And what happened to me is I covered up the thing that held it all together with my new phone case. Can I just tell you this? What sin does in your life is it covers up the actual thing that God built in you to make your life complete, to make your life whole. And that was going to be your ability to love and desire the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and to love the people around you. And relationships with God and relationships with each other are where most of the pain in our world come from. And we try to fix them with so many things, with politics and with ideas and with economy and justice and all of those things. But the truth is, the thing that the phone cover did for me, what that is in my life, is when I bring sin into my life of any kind, obvious sin, hidden sin, when I bring it in my life, it covers up the very thing God built in me for my life to be okay. The reason God hates my sin is because God loves me and He knows what it's going to do to me. Here's the problem, that sometimes I don't even recognize what's happened. There's a verse in Psalm that says this: creating me a pure heart. It's a prayer. It's literally the writer saying to God, God, help me with this. If I'm not careful, I'll let things come in that I won't even notice, and they begin to chip away at who I am. Creating me a pure heart, God, and make a right spirit. Give me a right spirit again. Creating me a pure heart is take away the things that are causing me to block the desire you put in me, and make a right spirit again in me. That's let me feel the feeling of what it's like to be okay with you, to stand in front of you, not ashamed. Well, the way that happens, I just want to ask you, maybe as a closing point this morning, I know not everybody's going to do it. I don't know where you're sitting and watching this, or standing or driving, or wherever you are, what you're looking at, if it's a little phone or a bigger tablet or computer or a big thing on the wall. I don't know what it looks like for you. And you may have already kind of tuned out. You're just trying to get to the end now, because that's what we do sometimes. I've been there. I know what that's like. But I wonder if you just hang on for just 1 second. We'll close down. But can I just ask you, if you have enough guts to do this, would you pray that prayer to God? Would you say, God, would you create a clean heart in me? Would you identify in me what it is that is covering up that magnetic attraction that you've built in me to love the Lord my God with all my heart, soul, mind, and love the people around me? And God, I'll be honest, I'm struggling to love you, or I'm certainly struggling to love the craziness in our world or the people in our world. Matter of fact, they seem like an obstacle to my outcomes. God, would you help me figure out what I've allowed into my life that is lessening my desire to love you and my desire to love them. And when you pray that prayer, God will help you identify. Most of us don't even need that much help. Matter of fact, I sat up really late last night finishing this talk. And I was just writing things down, and I prayed that prayer, and I said, God, would you create in me a heart that is clean and pure? Would you just identify in me the areas of my life? Some of those are easy. That sometimes I say things and I embellish them because I want people to think more highly of me. For some people, that may be easy. It may be where this woman was. I'm just involved in things, and I know I shouldn't be. It's not a question. I'm not going, yeah, it's not that bad. I'm just going, yeah, I know it's wrong. But it's hard for me, and I'm stuck in it, and I've got a habit built. For some people, though, it is far greater than that. For some people, it may be where even those people that brought the girl in and threw her in front of Jesus, they felt like they were better than she was. They had this prideful, haughty spirit. They felt like, thank God I'm not like her. And the truth is, they weren't like her. They were her. They were broken and in need. I watched a little piece of the Democratic National Convention, 8 minutes the other night. Wasn't my gig. There's going to be another one soon. Won't be my gig either. I listened to a woman who is representing people far up in the Northeast, and she's probably as extreme can be, and I'm just listening to her, and she was so well spoken, and her ideas are so far from where my ideas would be, and there's a part of me that just, it makes me angry to hear her speak sometimes. I'm just blown away that people would say, okay, that's probably okay. Not that we have different ideas. It just seems like we're from different planets. And then there's this piece of me that goes, instead of being angry for her, wouldn't my heart be broken that she needs Jesus? She doesn't need a better political affiliation. She doesn't need a better philosophical view. She needs Jesus. That my heart is supposed to break when I see people who are hurting. And the reason people do ridiculous things is because they're broken. And as followers of Jesus, we're supposed to be broken when we see broken people. It's supposed to break our heart. That's what Jesus did to the point of crucifixion. And here's the truth is, part of the sin in me is sometimes I just get so ticked at the people who aren't like me that instead of my heart being broken, it just makes me want to say something or act some way or look down on them. And I'm just telling you, if Jesus were here, he would say, maybe, Chris, you need to take that rock and drop it today. And maybe you need a pure heart, and your pure heart may not look like somebody else's. It may be all these hidden things that you actually find as values. But maybe your value needs to be found in me. Can I just ask you, would you pray that prayer? Would you just say, 1 John 1:9 says, when we confess our sins, that God is faithful to forgive us. When he says confess, I used to think that was like a list. I got to mention them all. Like, okay, God, and I told a lie, and I kind of embellished that, and I looked at something I shouldn't, and then while nobody was looking, I also did. And if I missed wood, God's going to be like, well, he's out, bug zapper. And now I realize what he wants me to do is agree that sin damages me, and what I need to do is agree with him about sin. Not that sin is just bad, but that sin separates me from him, and it is covering up the desire I have within him. What if God created in you the exact thing you need? And what if overcoming sin in our life, one by one, just setting them aside, dropping those rocks, what if that is the key to me loving the Lord my God with all my heart, soul, and mind, and loving the people around me? What if it's not trying harder to love? What if it is me obeying God and doing the things he's taught me and allowing him to point those out to me? What if that's the key? What if that would be what changes everything for you? Would you pray that prayer, creating me a clean heart and renew that healthy spirit in me? I want to feel the fact that you're drawing me to you. So God, help us with that. I don't even recognize in such a broken world that sometimes I'm taking in so much garbage that it has cut off my connection. It's not that you've moved. It's not that you're not important. It's not that I'm not trying. That often I just allow little things to land in places and leave them there. Help us fight for healthier versions of us. Not because we're so good at it, because as we remove the things that you hate, it allows us to be the objects you love, and we can receive it and give it back, and it helps us live at peace. We ask it in your name.